The MLB trade deadline is officially over, which means it's time for me to go through every single team and give them a grade A through F on how well they did this trade deadline. And let me tell you, there are some great teams, but boy oh boy, there are a few teams that did nothing, were horrible. I think you have a guess of one of those teams, but we'll find out as we get into this video. Thank you guys so much for the amazing support over the trade deadline content. Make sure to drop a like on the video if you do enjoy it, as well as subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the content, as well as follow me on all my social media at GiraffeNeckMarc, links in the description, and let me know in the comments what team you think had the best trade deadline. So without further ado, let's get going into this. Let's get it started off with the Minnesota Twins. The Minnesota Twins made one move. They exchanged Jorge Lopez for Dylan Floro. This is a change of scenery reliever swap. Weird trade. I'm not a huge Dylan Floro guy. To me, the Twins, who aren't very good, I feel like, and it's just they're in the AL Central, they didn't have to do much to continue to be the best team in that division, but they also didn't do anything to try and help them win a wild card series. So for me, it's gonna get a D for Dylan Floro. Just not a great trade by any means. This trade deadline was super disappointing. For the Washington Nationals, last place in the NL East, expect them to be sellers, and they only made one move, trading Jeimer Candelario in exchange for Kevin Made. I hope it's pronounced that way. And pitching prospect, DJ Hers. DJ Hers is a solid pitching prospect for sure. Kevin Made is fine. I expected them to do more, which is why I'm gonna give them a C+. It's still better than just like average because they signed Jeimer Candelario in the offseason for nothing and were able to flip him, but I thought they'd make a few more moves, try and dump off that Patrick Corbin contract on somebody. The San Francisco Giants in a really good position this season, playing significantly better than expected, but this trade deadline was just not it. AJ Pollock and Mark Mathias from the Mariners are the only two guys they got, really. It's just a disappointing trade deadline. You expected a little bit more for the Giants team, who need a little help on the pitching side, specifically starting pitching, and could have used another big bat. I thought they were going to do more. For me, D- for disappointingly not very good. The Cincinnati Reds are up next. Felt very much like the Baltimore Orioles trade deadline of last season. They kind of are outperforming their expectations this year. They're probably realistically 1 year away from being like a real contender, but they're playing really good baseball. When that pitching rotation is healthy, they could win a playoff series for sure. And the young talent is fantastic, but only getting Sam Moll, left-handed reliever, which does address a little bit of a need, is fine, but that's basically all it is. I'm gonna give the Reds a C. And the only reason they're getting a C is because I could see why they didn't want to go for it, but it's still disappointing. So actually, you know what? C-. Change that. C-. For the Oakland A's, another team that is so god-awful. They're making a lot of moves, you would have thought. Didn't really do too much at this trade deadline. They got rid of Jace Peterson, they got rid of Sam Moll, and they moved Shintaro Fujinami. But they got back Chad Patrick, Joe Boyle, who's a super interesting pitching prospect, strikes out everybody but also walks a ton, and Easton Lucas. I like Joe Boyle, but I think this trade deadline was terrible. D- for the Oakland A's. How do you not get more? How do you not get more? How do you not get rid of Brent Rooker? There's a lot of stuff on this that just doesn't really make sense to me. How about those Chicago Cubs? Cubs have been a little bit of a surprising team this year, playing better baseball. Cody Bellinger has looked fantastic this year, but they definitely have some holes on this team. They addressed one of them by getting Jeimer Candelario, who has been having a fantastic year for the Nationals. He's actually technically coming home to the Cubs, the team he first played with. He's a good ball player. They also grabbed Josh Roberson and Jose Cuas for some relief help. Josh Roberson, more of a depth relief arm. Cuas will have a major league impact now. They're better than they were before the deadline, but I thought the Cubs would do a little more for a team that is needing to fight to get into the playoffs. C+. Jeimer helps, but it's not a whole lot. Seattle Mariners, this one's a weird trade deadline because it's a team that, again, is trying to fight to get into the playoffs, but looks like they might have also realized, yeah, maybe this isn't our year, because the moves that they made, they felt like more of sellers than buyers. They didn't really bring in much. The big trade was when they sent out Paul Sewald to the Arizona Diamondbacks in exchange for Josh Rojas, Dominic Canzone, and Ryan Bliss, along with a player to be named later from the Giants and Edward Bizardo. This trade deadline was a big nothing burger for me. It's just a C. I don't think they necessarily got that much worse. I mean, Sewald, losing him hurts, but they make good relievers out there in Seattle, and getting in the guys they got are like fine. It's a whatever trade to me. Like I said, nothing. Tampa Bay Rays, always interesting at the deadline. You always keep an eye out at the players that they're interested in. They got us started with Robert Stevenson, who is going to unlock that full potential finally with the Rays. He's already looked disgusting. Just take a look at his stuff. It's filthy. The big trade was for Aaron Savali, who they got from the Guardians in exchange for one of their top prospects, Kyle Manzardo. Really like this trade. Savali's a very solid pitcher. Looked good this year. The Rays are going to unlock more, kind of like they did with Zach Eflin. Then they added some bullpen help with Adrian Sampson and Manuel Rodriguez, and they got another catcher with Alex Jackson. I really like the addition of Savali. I love the addition of Stevenson. I know they're going to get a lot out of Sampson and Rodriguez. This, to me, is going to be a B+. I think Savali is going to be really great for this Rays team. It could have been an A if they got a big bat, but they went pitching, and they did a pretty good job, I think. The Angels. The Angels are low-key kind of going for it. Now, they didn't go out and make any insane trades, and they did get rid of a lot of prospects, but bringing in Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez will help them immediately. I know Lucas Giolito had a rough start against the Braves, but it's the Braves. They're filthy. I still believe in him very much, that he can be very good for this team. Reynaldo Lopez, good bullpen arm. And then they got Randall Randall Grichuk and CJ Cron to help with that offense. Just getting two competent major leaguers is so big for this team. You were playing Trey Cabbage out there. Luis Rengifo's been playing the outfield. Like, there's just some guys that don't really fit on this squad. And getting in Randall Grichuk and CJ Cron gives you two very competent Major League Baseball players, along with Dominic Leone to help out in the bullpen. Shout out to Dominic from the Mets. I don't particularly like him, but he's been okay this year. I'm gonna give the Angels a B. I think a lot of people are crushing them for giving up so many prospects and not really getting back a whole lot. They definitely gave up a lot for Giolito, but if the Angels are really trying to show Shohei Ohtani that they're going for it and want to have a chance at signing him next year, they need to make the playoffs, and these moves 100% make the Angels a way better team than they were before the deadline. The Boston Red Sox. This is a team that's fighting for the playoffs, and I was so disappointed by their trade deadline. So disappointed. They did get an addition of Luis Urias, who's going to be a nice guy who can play up the middle, second base, even shortstop if you want. Trevor Story is on his way back. They're probably considering that. One of their big deadline deals is getting Trevor Story again. The other two guys they got were Nick Robertson from the Dodgers and Justin Hagenman. Robertson, okay reliever. I just thought the Red Sox might do more or might sell more, and they kind of did nothing, and I want them to push for it because I think this team's actually got some good players here and there. D for me for the Red Sox. Los Angeles Dodgers had a pretty decent trade deadline. Seems very good. We know that. They're one of the better teams in Major League Baseball. There's not a lot of holes on this roster. If you look at them, though, they need a little more starting pitching help. They need a little bullpen help, and they did address that. On the starting pitching side, you brought in Lance Lynn, who I know stunk with the White Sox, but you got him in a competent organization. He looked great in his first start already. And then for the bullpen, Ryan Yarbrough and Joe Kelly are two very good veteran arms to add to that bullpen. Joe Kelly's been great in the postseason as well, very clutch. And then to address the shortstop problem, they got two guys with Ahmed Rosario and Enrique Hernandez. Enrique will play shortstop, second base, outfield. He's a very good utility guy, and Ahmed Rosario has the ability to maybe one day crack into that potential we once saw as the #1 prospect in the Mets system back in the day. I thought the Dodgers actually had a pretty decent trade deadline addressing their needs. I give them a B-. I think this made their team better, and you know Lance Lynn's gonna have like a huge game in the playoffs for them. It just feels like it. And Enrique's good vibes. Keeping it out west with the Colorado Rockies, they were obviously sellers in this deadline. They brought in Alec Barger, Justin Brule, Jake Madden, Mason Albright, Victor Vodnik, and Tanner Gordon. Victor Vodnik is my favorite guy that they brought in. I think he has the most potential on the mound. Some pretty good stuff there. But overall, I just felt like the haul back was just like fine. It was by no means like this groundbreaking amount of prospects that they got back. They got a bunch, a lot on the pitching side, and I just don't particularly care for the Rockies to try and develop pitching, just try and out-hit everybody. But I don't think it was a bad one. I just don't think it was great, so I give him a C+. Like, cool, you sold guys that you should have, and you at least got someone back. One of the teams they trade with, the Atlanta Braves, up next here. The Braves brought in Brad Hand, who will now have played for every single team in the National League East, Nicky Lopez from the Kansas City Royals, and Pierce Johnson, again, from the Colorado Rockies. Braves are normally a little bit more active, but I guess they feel pretty comfortable in the National League East as well as just the National League standing. They have a disgusting team. They're filthy. If they need help, it was probably in the bullpen. They're getting Max Fried back soon. They're getting Kyle Wright back soon. Those are their big trade deadline acquisitions. I felt like this was a C+. The team is better, but like marginally, and they didn't do anything, I think, to really separate themselves even more from where they were at, which is tough to do because they're sick. Now, one of the best trade deadlines in all of baseball has to be the Texas Rangers. A lot of big moves. I love what they did. First, they brought in Aroldis Chapman, who has been cash money this season, dominant, throwing 102, 103 miles an hour again. Say what you want about him off the field, he's horrible, but on the field, he's been money this year, and he looks like he is so back. They then brought in Max Scherzer from the New York Mets, which is so sad for me to say as a Mets fan, but I think it's a good pickup. While Scherzer hasn't been at his sharpest this season, he still has the ability to be a top 15, 20 pitcher in the game, and the Rangers could definitely use some starting pitching help with Nathan Eovaldi going down. They made a trade with the Cardinals to get Jordan Montgomery and Chris Stratton. Stratton helps the bullpen, who definitely needs some help. They don't have a lot of great arms in there that you can rely on, and Jordan Montgomery is having a great year. Move him to Texas in a winning environment, good defense behind him. Feels like a good fit for Jordan Montgomery, who's been very good. And last but not least, Austin Hedges, who's going to kind of fill in a little bit for Jonah Heim, who is currently out with an injury. Austin Hedges stinks, but at least he's a good defensive catcher. And if Mitch Garver, you don't want his defense in late in the game, you could go to Hedges, or you can just kind of platoon them a little bit. A+ for the Texas Rangers. I think they arguably had the best trade deadline in all of baseball. The Milwaukee Brewers, a pretty solid trade deadline for them. I'm going to end up giving them a B. I love the addition of Carlos Santana, just a guy who gets on base, hits for some power. I expect big things from him in Milwaukee. He's going to hit some big home runs for them. Mark Canha, on-base machine, plays solid left field. He's overall a very, very good player. We like to call him Marky Cheerios on the Mets Stuff podcast because he's reliable. He's boring, but he's there for you. He's good for your heart. He never scares you. Everything is always super calm, cool, and collected with Mark Canha. They brought in a couple prospects with Evan McKendry and Bradley Blaylock, and then they also got Andrew Chafin from the Diamondbacks to add to that left-handed relief, which is a pretty solid guy to get out there. Chafin's not a great closer, but in the role that he'll be in Milwaukee, he'll be very, very useful. I give the Brewers a B. I think one of the more underrated trade deadlines comes from the Chicago White Sox. Very impressed with what they were able to do for a team that I don't consider to be the smartest. They sold, and I loved it. it. They weren't able to get rid of Tim Anderson, but he's having like a historically bad year for himself. They got rid of a bunch of guys. Here's what they got back. Edgar Quero, top 100 prospect in baseball. Kai Busch, Trace Thompson, Jordan Leisure, Nick Nastrini, Corey Lee, Luis Patino, Jake Eater, and Juan Corella. To me, this is an A trade deadline for the White Sox. This is about as good as it could have been. Without completely tearing down this team, you still kept a lot of that core with Dylan Cease, Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez. Those guys are still around. Corey Lee is going to be a major league catcher whenever you move on from Grandal. Edgar Quero can fill in after him, and he's moving through the minors very quickly. Kai Busch, good minor league pitcher. Nastrini, Leisure, Luis Patino is going to be at the major leagues now. Jake Eater is a really solid pickup. A guy who just a few years ago was like considered to be one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. And Juan Corella, who's a young projectable arm from the Yankees farm system. Love their trade deadline. I give the White Sox an A. It's a rare W for this team. Normally fly that on the north side. You can fly it on the south side now if you want. Woo. Talk about a bad trade deadline. I think this is the worst trade deadline we have seen from a competing team in a very, very long time, and that is the New York Yankees. Big ol' F. I know I'm a Yankee hater, but I know you Yankee fans at home agree with me. Brian Cashman completely the bed. Horrible trade deadline. Keenan Middleton is a nice relief arm, but guess what? The Yankees have the best bullpen in baseball. That was not their problem. And they also added Spencer Howard, who has been not very good. I don't understand what they were doing. I don't understand his thought process. I don't get it. There is no urgency with this team whatsoever. They're in trouble. And I think this was a horrible, fire-worthy trade deadline that Brian Cashman had. When they miss the playoffs this year, because it looks like they might, Brian Cashman and everybody's got to go. They got to clean house and just come on, like get a clue. How do you not do more? What are you thinking? You're going to rock Jake Bowers every single day in the outfield? You want IKF to get significant playing time? What is going on in this world? So bad for Brian Cashman. Arizona Diamondbacks, young, fun team who is sliding a little bit right now, trying to save the season. And I like the additions they added to their team. Paul Sewald, they need a legitimate closer for the back end of their games. And Paul Sewald has been great this year. He's rocking like a 35% K rate. Disgusting. And you now get with Brent Strom, the pitching guru genius in Arizona. Might get even better. Tommy Pham from the New York Mets. I love Big Time Tommy. That's what we call him if you remember Instagram. Big Time Tommy. Love Tommy Pham. Such a good ball player. Great addition for that outfield. You bring some power too. Peter Strzelecki in the trade for Andrew Chafin. I guess they just felt like Chafin wasn't really cutting it there. They need a little more help with a right-handed arm. And Jace Peterson, who can go all over the infield, give you some depth, give you some value, even play a little outfield if you need it. Thought the Diamondbacks had a solid trade deadline. Not the best by any means. I gave them a B- because I think they got better. It wasn't the pieces that they needed to like get to that next level, but I think this is going to be enough to keep them above water and push them into the postseason. Pittsburgh Pirates, decent little trade deadline for them. I like what they did. They were able to get former first-round pick Alika Williams from the Tampa Bay Rays in that Robert Stevenson trade. I'm not the biggest Alika Williams fan, but he's hitting a lot better ever since he got to the Pirates farm system. They also picked up Johnny Severino, Alfonso Rivas, Estuar Suero from the Padres, who's a kind of interesting little prospect. They might have found something there. Jackson Wolf, who's had some major league time this year as a pitcher, and Bailey Falter from the Phillies. I thought the Pirates added a bunch of good stuff in a season where it was encouraging how well they played, but they're obviously not there yet. That's a B. They didn't tear it down, but they got better. Yeah, the Cleveland Guardians, I think I'm going to give them a C+. I like the addition of Kyle Manzardo, but I hate giving up Aaron Savali, so that's kind of where I stand. I love the addition of Khalil Watson. I know he has looked horrible in the minors, but a change of scenery, something was wrong there in Miami. They're also god-awful at player development in terms of hitting. I think Khalil Watson in Cleveland, who's been able to get a lot out of smaller middle infielders in their farm system, this is a decent little fit, and he's a former first-round pick. This guy was like considered to be one of the top 5 players in that draft class. They got Gene Segura, but they cut him. They also brought in Noah Syndergaard, who doesn't look good, but maybe one day he'll look okay. That's why I give him a C+. I don't think any of these moves are crazy besides Kyle Manzardo, but again, you also gave up Savali, who helps you a lot right now. Weird deadline, C+. I don't think it's as bad as some people are making it out. Speaking of one of the teams that they trade with, the Miami Marlins, making moves, trying to make the playoffs. Just lost a heartbreaker the other night with one of their new acquisitions, David Robertson, blowing his first game in his first appearance. They also brought in Jorge Lopez, Ryan Weathers, Jake Berger, and Josh Bell. I think the Marlins had a really solid trade deadline. I'm giving them a B+. They're so close to an A. So close. But they just like didn't get like one of those big impact guys that I was maybe expecting them to. Josh Bell has the ability to be that guy, I think, because he was so bad in Cleveland, it just seemed like it didn't work there. And he's shown the ability to be a really good hitter in the NL East before. Jake Berger crushes baseballs. That's just all he does. He mashes. Ryan Weathers, interesting move, a little bit of a project that they're going to work on, but they've shown the ability to get more out of pitchers, especially left-handed ones. Jesus Luzardo. David Robertson, I still think is good, and Jorge Lopez is probably better than Dylan Floro, which is why I go B+, not A. I think it was a really good trade deadline. Kansas City Royals, making a lot of moves, but kind of not really significant. I don't know. C+. Henry Williams, Devin Mann, Derlin Figueroa, Tucker Davidson, Nelson Velasquez, Taylor Hearn, Cole Reagans, and Ronnie Cabrera. Truthfully, the only reason they got a plus here is because of Ronnie Cabrera, 17-year-old prospect from the Rangers. Looks like he could be a ball player. I like the projections that you're seeing from him. But otherwise, the rest of this just seems like a lot of filler. Whatever, Kansas City, C+. San Diego Padres, not selling. They are going for it, and they went out and got some guys. Scott Barlow, Rich Hill, G-Man Choi, Garrett Cooper, and prospect Sean Reynolds. I love the addition of Rich Hill. 5 innings every 5 days. He's just so consistent, and he's got the best nickname ever in Dick Mountain. G-Man Choi is a vibes guy, also pretty clutch. Love G-Man. He can play first too. Allows you to move Cronenworth maybe to the outfield. Garrett Cooper gives you a DH bat, a first baseman as well. You can put him in the outfield, crush his left-handed pitching. He's actually a very solid player. And Scott Barlow's a really good reliever for that bullpen that definitely needs some help. It's just a couple years after he probably should have been traded by the Royals. Overall, I gave the Padres a B. This is an improved deadline, and you know what? They're going for it rather than trading Snell and Hader and all those guys, which I appreciate. Detroit Tigers, they made one trade. One, Michael Lorenzen for Hao-Yu Lee. He is a 20-year-old who was at A-ball who plays a bunch of positions pretty well, and he's an okay hitter. I mean, this was a bad trade deadline. Scott Harris, I expected a lot more. He's a smart guy. I think they got a little screwed from Erod declining the trade to the Dodgers, but man, to only get Hao-Yu Lee for Michael Lorenzen? D for Detroit? This was like, what is this trade deadline? You're not getting better or worse? What is this? Actually, you got worse on the field. You didn't really get better in the farm system either. Bizarre. Those pesky Philadelphia Phillies, like I just mentioned. Michael Lorenzen, the big name here, as well as Rodolfo Castro. Big Rodolfo Castro fan, plays a bunch of different positions. He doesn't hit the ball hard consistently, but he is 73rd percentile max exit velo, so there's something that could be there, and I feel like he's probably going to have a little bit of an impact for the Phillies. He's at least better than Josh Harrison, who they had on the roster, and the Phillies have been able to get a lot out of their pitching recently, and a guy like Michael Lorenzen probably gets even better in Philadelphia on a career season for him. So I ended up giving the Phillies a rare B. It's a rare time where I'm going to give them props, but yeah, that was a pretty solid trade deadline considering they didn't actually do that much. Let's head north of the border. Toronto Blue Jays, they made 3 moves, and they are all former St. Louis Cardinals. Genesis Cabrera, Jordan Hicks, and Paul DeJong. I like the additions of Genesis Cabrera and Jordan Hicks, 2 good relief arms that go into this bullpen with electric stuff. Jordan Hicks, of course, throws like 103. The movement's disgusting. He didn't look great in his first appearance, but it's also whatever. And Paul DeJong, it was more of like we got scared that Bo Bichette's out for the season, but it's good that Bo is not hurt as badly as we once thought. And Paul DeJong is a pretty good backup where you move him to second base. Like you can move him around. He's a good fielder, and I think that bat will come alive in some competitive baseball. So I gave the Blue Jays a B. I think it was a pretty good deadline for a team that doesn't really have a lot of holes. The team that they made all their trades with, the St. Louis Cardinals, up next. There is a list of prospects. They were sellers for one of the rare times. Cesar Prieto, Drew Rom, Zach Showalter, Matt Svanson, Thomas Sujasi. Yeah, that's like a weird way to pronounce that. It looks like Saggies. Tekoa Roby, John King, Sem Robertsa, Adam Kloffenstein, and Samuel Hernandez. The guys I'm going to focus on are Sujasi and Tekoa Roby. Both guys from the 2020 MLB draft. Both guys in AA at a very young age. Tekoa Roby hasn't had great success this season, but has shown the ability for some really, really good stuff. Cardinals, I think that's fair to pick up. And Thomas Sujasi, I really, really like him. There was a rumor that maybe the Mets were going to get him, and I was super excited. Very, very underrated hitter. I don't know why he doesn't get enough love. He's got like a 900 OPS in AA as a 21-year-old this year. I think that's a great pickup. He's going to be a really good player for the Cardinals in the future, and they just got a lot of solid prospects into the system, and we know the Cardinals have a pretty good ability at developing. So I give the Cardinals a B+. Very solid trade deadline. I like a lot of the players they brought in. For the Baltimore Orioles, a weird one. Not a lot of moves. Shintaro Fujinami got it started. Then they brought in Logan Reinhart along with Jack Flaherty. Flaherty being the big piece. Although I think Fujinami might have the most impact because boy, oh boy, they might have fixed him. His stuff is electric and he looks great. Jack Flaherty's an interesting one. At least the Orioles have a very, very weird park where maybe he can get away with it because left field's so deep. I'm just not a huge Jack Flaherty guy. I don't think he's that good, but maybe they'll fix something, unlock it. The Cardinals like a little more pitch to contact. Maybe you get him to get more swings and misses and that changes his profile. I wanted the Orioles to do more, but I understand why they didn't. So I gave them a B- because I do think this is a better team than it was before the deadline. It's just not enough to make them be like, whoa, the Orioles are serious, but also they didn't give up like a single top prospect really. So that's pretty cool. The Houston Astros, they made 2 big moves. They brought back Kendall Graveman and they brought back Justin Verlander, which I mean addresses 2 kind of needs. They want a more significant arm in the bullpen with Kendall Graveman, who's looked pretty solid this year, and Justin Verlander, who's looked solid as well. They wanted another starting pitcher. They got him. The former Cy Young Award winner who was just there last season, winning the World Series with them. I gave the Astros an A. The only reason it's not an A+ is because I felt like they needed a corner outfielder still, and they did not grab one. That was the only thing that I felt was a little weird, but getting Verlander, getting Graveman, and you're basically not going to be paying Verlander a whole lot either. It's a great, great trade deadline for them. Them and the Rangers are going to be battling it out along with the Angels in the AL West, the most fun division in baseball right now. That, to me, gets an A. It's a really good trade deadline. And then last but certainly not least, my favorite team, the New York Mets. The Mets were sellers. I'm not happy about it. I wish they were buying because I'm like, hey, this team should have been good this year, but they weren't. So the reality of the situation is this was the right path for the Mets to choose to get rid of their players. And boy, did they. They got a bunch of good ones back with their prospects. Drew Gilbert, Ryan Clifford, Jeremy Rodriguez. They also brought in Jeremiah Jackson, Justin Jarvis, Luis Angel Acuna, Marco Vargas, Ronald Hernandez, and then some bullpen help with Phil Bickford and Adam Kolarek. Luis Angel Acuna, Drew Gilbert, top 100 prospects in Major League Baseball. Automatically love it. Ryan Clifford, sneaky, awesome prospect. Look at his numbers, mashing at high A ball. He should get to Double A by the end of the year, and he's only 20 years old. Crazy power potential. Marco Vargas, sick. Really underrated prospect they got from the Marlins. He looks like someone who could be really awesome. Along with the other guys thrown in, the Mets had a fantastic trade deadline, all things considered. I gave them an A-. The only reason I don't give them an A or A+ is I don't think that you should be able to get an A or A+ for a team that was supposed to be very good, who ended up selling because they just didn't play well. But I think if you think the Mets deserve anything less than an A, you probably are just salty, or you think that I'm biased and you just hate me and want to go against me. But the Mets legitimately brought in a ton of great prospects, made this farm system a heck of a lot stronger, and there are some players in here that could make some serious impacts as soon as next season for the Mets, like a Luis Angel Acuna. Great haul back. Super sad that it's going this way, but tip the cap to Billy Epler. It was the right move, and I think he got a lot back. I'd love to know who you guys thought had the best trade deadline down in the comment section below. Let me know where you agree or disagree with me. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it, as well as subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the content. Follow me on all my social media at GiraffeNeckMarc. Links are in the description, and that's where I'll wrap up today's video, guys. You know the drill from here on out. YouTube recommends you watch this video. This is my most recent upload, so click through those if you have not yet seen them. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow for another video. Bye.